Group of SA would like to welcome you to a mini conference on the topic of chronic relapse. Today we have four special speakers from the USA: Harvey A, Bill S, Steve S and Jim B. Today's first speaker is Harvey A, sober since the 8th of March 1984. Harvey's been instrumental to the world of SA. Hundreds, probably thousands have benefited from your service. I certainly have. Thank you. Today's speakers will be recorded, including the QA. Harvey, I'll give you a warning at 30 minutes as you've requested, and then we'll open it up for a QA. Without further ado, welcome Harvey A.
Hi, everyone. I'm Harvey A from now Naples, was from Nashville, Tennessee, and I've been sober, sexually sober, for 38 years and 8 months, one day at a time. You know, it was so cool. I was looking at who was speaking, and we're all interrelated to Nashville. Nashville, Tennessee. Kind of fascinating. Bill, me, and Steve were in Nashville. Bill's still there. And Jim was integrated with Steve when he moved to Memphis. And I worked for a while in Memphis and got to be around people there. Oh, there it's Jim. Yeah. I'm so glad they're speaking after me. Yes, we're going to need their love and compassion and kindness to make up for the tough crap I'm going to give you.
Good.
This is not going to be a gentle talk. And it's very hard for me to do tough love. How the heck do you keep relapsing? Why do people keep relapsing? What happens? It's so basic that it's inconceivable. You know, Jess would always tell this story of Nuke Rockney with the Green Bay Packers. This great, great football team. Great team. And they were having such a terrible season. Such a bad season. And this particular game they were playing was worse than anything he had seen. And he, in halftime, gets him in the locker room and has him do a circle around him and says to him, "You guys are the greatest players around. You're magnificent. But what a problematic season you're having. Guys, we need to get back to the basics." And all of a sudden, he picks up a football and says, "This is a football. Either you go back to church or synagogue and do it your way with religion, or accept the football. It's a disease, a problem in my brain. I'm not a normal man. I have a defect in my brain. I have been hearing more God stuff on these Zoom meetings since COVID. God's doing this, God's doing that. Man, I hope you don't do that if you have diabetes. And expect God to inject you with the insulin. What more did we want from our higher power than to have someone discover insulin? But faith without action is dead. And I don't care what you guys say, if you're relapsers, you have not accepted this is a physical allergy accompanied by a mental obsession. How the heck can you do step one? We do have willpower. We wouldn't be on this meeting if we didn't have willpower. We wouldn't eat. We wouldn't get up in the mornings. Sure, we have willpower. But not when it's this disease, because it affects all parts of our brain, especially our judgment center. And you could pray all you want, but once a cucumber becomes a pickle, it can never go back to being a cucumber again. Now, I want to back up. This is only my opinion. I don't talk for SA. But I have one of the lowest bottom stories I've ever heard. You name it, I've done it 3 times at least. And my sponsor would say, Harvey, if it works for you, it would work for a dog. So why do people chronically relapse? Because they never got sober to begin with. There really isn't chronic relapse. People have never gotten sober. They stopped acting out for a while, but they never got sober. Because the first step doesn't say we're powerless over masturbating. Doesn't say we're powerless over prostitution or the internet. It says we're powerless over lust. My allergy is to lust. And don't give me that stuff I hear at meetings. The minute you bring up the word lust, it shoots away from the lust we're talking about. Talks about lust for cars, lust for money. No, I'm talking about sexual lust. So people get this technicality but they never actually become members of SA. They never really become sober. How can Harvey say they don't become members of SA? Because a membership requirement is not like an AA, where it only has one thing about a desire to stop drinking. We have 2 things, a desire to stop lusting and become sexually sober. Well, people want to stop. They want to get sexually sober. They're having too many consequences. But they don't want to stop lusting. And what do I mean by lusting? And I only speak for myself. But let me tell you, I might speak for myself, but I've seen thousands of people come and go in this program. Thousands. I've watched them end up in jail. I've watched them end up dead. I've also watched many have no problems when they relapse because they're really not sex addicts. Anyone who's getting away with it and it's not progressing, and they have a little relapse here and there, chances are you're not a sex addict. You might be a sexual abuser, but if you're a real sex addict, you're going to get covered up, locked up, or sobered up. And God bless Mike C. years and years ago when he started talking about the culture of sobriety. We pamper our relapses as if they're not going to possibly die. Oh, we understand. Keep coming back. We understand. And then we let relapsers who have a day or two sobriety, if that much, lead off the meetings. In Nashville, we stuck with that sobriety imperative for decades, where people with the first 30 minutes of the meeting, first half of the meeting, if you did not have 30 days or more of sobriety, you kept your mouth shut till the second part of the meeting. And people say, oh, you're shaming us, you're shaming us. No, we're trying to save your life. If the meeting is a drunk problem meeting, it will get deeper and deeper into the problem. If you start with a solution, you'll get deeper and deeper into the solution. So most people are not willing to let go of sexual fantasies. I get real passionate about this, but I'm telling you, I might as well be talking to that wall than to most people on this meeting. You will not be able to hear this message. The message is, I cannot stop the first thought, the first photograph. As Jess would say, the first photograph is on God. That's how he made me. I'm going to translate everything, that first thought, into something sexual. An orchid plant's going to look sexual to me. It's what do I do with that first thought? Do I let it just be a photograph and say, oh, there it is again, and let it flow out? Or I'm going to take it and nurture it and build it into this fantasy. Once the fantasy begins, that's the first drink, as Jess would say. And once you take that first drink, the phenomenon of craving begins. Very simple, if you believe in the disease model. And if you're doing what the SA book says, that our basic text is the AA book. And how does the AA book basically start? With a doctor's opinion. If you don't get the doctor's opinion, it's going to be so difficult to understand the steps. And what happens is in chapter 5, those first 5 paragraphs before you take the steps. You know, people just think I'm taking the steps. Man, those first 5 paragraphs, until that first paragraph, you're honest with yourself. It's almost impossible not to get this program, except if we're not honest with ourselves. And what's part of the dishonesty? People seem to be afraid to be honest with God. God, I really don't want to stop lusting. Instead, oh, I want to stop. I want to do this. No, you don't want to stop lusting. It's that simple. If you want to stop lusting, you will go to any length that day to use tools that the program has. And you'll have wonderful reasons for lusting. My father was too strict with me. My mother didn't love me enough. My wife's not saying the right words to me. Whatever the excuse, rationalize a rational line. And they say it beautifully in AA. I drink when I'm so depressed, it's dark and cloudy, and I feel depressed. But I also drink when I'm happy to celebrate the happiness. In other words, that's my natural state to drink. My natural state of my ego, since I've been a tiny little kid, is to undress people in my mind. My Sunday school teacher and his wife, and you name it, when I didn't even know what sex was. That's how my brain is. But if I go into a fantasy, no way. The phenomenon of craving will begin, and I will have to take a second drink. So where do you people begin to tell themselves the truth, to tell their sponsor the truth, to tell God their truth? I'm not ready to stop lusting. God's going to love you anyway. There's nothing you can do to make God stop loving you. Nothing. Do you really think God gives a crap if you masturbate or not? Or what? Or no? Do you actually think in the theme of multi-universes, God gives a crap? He's been watching men and women masturbate for thousands of years. There's been prostitution for thousands of years. No, God's going to love me regardless. I'm not going to love me. Because once those endorphins get in my brain, I get drunk. I was delirious for years and years. Looking back at it, I lived in a delirious state. One of the hardest things, and I don't have shame over it, is 38 years later, I'm remembering things I used to do that I forgot. And I'll say, God, did you really do that, Harvey? I was delirious. From the moment I woke up, masturbating, fantasies, intercourse, picking people up, men and women off the street. I was drunk. So if you want me to tap you on the head and say, oh, go for it, I'm not the one to say it. If you're really a sex addict. Now, why get sober? Why let go of our best friend? You know, I think of my wife often. When she was a kid, penicillin helped her so much. But one day she got allergic to penicillin. And now if she takes it, it could kill her. Lust and masturbation probably saved me in my formative years. Helped me in a very dysfunctional family. But at some point, I got allergic to it. And it was going to kill me and people around me. Don't forget, I came into the program when they didn't even have the word AIDS. People were dying, getting these illnesses. And in my mind, I was saying I was having protected sex. No way. I was having unprotected sex a lot of times. And how I am still here. And my wife didn't get AIDS from me. Thank God I didn't get AIDS. And I didn't give it to her. I gave her venereal diseases, but not HIV. And let me tell you, if I stop coming to these meetings, if I don't keep giving it away, if I don't hit my knees twice a day and go from 4 to 5 meetings a week and do my readings and my hour meditations most days, and I stopped having anything to do with you all, I give myself months. And that disease will start whispering. It's incurable. How do I know? I came in at 44 years old. I'm 83. The thoughts still every now and then pop in or show up in my dreams. It's incurable. If you're truly a sex addict. And if you're not, go for it, man. We just coddle people in AA. They say, hey, you don't believe it here? Well, get your case of beer, get to it faster. I've been so tender and loving today. Can you imagine when I have a bad day? I love you all. It is so painful to sit on meeting after meeting and hear what I hear. And people will say, oh, just do the steps. The steps will do it. No, not if you're not honest with yourself. and you're doing the steps drunk. You could be doing your inventories and just coming off a 10-minute fantasy. Who are we kidding? So I'm going to keep believing in the disease model, even if it might not be true. It works for me. See, there really is no definite truths. This program is not a cookie cutter program. It's not a cookie cutter God. You follow, I go to a weekly face-to-face Joe and Charlie AA meeting. And man, they have insights and stuff. But man, if you're not sober, you're not going to hear any of it. So my sponsor would say over and over, Cherry would say, the program is like a surveyor's tripod. It's so sturdy, you could take it anywhere, anywhere. Hills, flatlands. Because it has 3 sturdy legs. 1 leg, God of our understanding. 2, the steps. And 3, the fellowship that's composed of meetings and sponsorship. Let one of those legs go down, the whole thing falls over. So you could pray to your heart's content, the God of your understanding. But if you stop doing the steps, if you stop going to meetings, I wish you luck. How often do I hear the word powerless at meetings? Rarely. People will say, I should have done this, I should have done that. That word should is right back into the religious model, the morality model. No, we're not bad getting good. We're sick people getting well. You're either allergic or you're not allergic. If you're not allergic, what are you coming for? If you're not staying sober anyway, why shame yourself? But if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, man. And I want to stop with what do we get? Roy was so good about emphasizing this cannot be a no-no program. It has to be based on a positive sobriety. If you don't get something better that or as good as an orgasm, man, this is going to be a tough one to do. This program. There is nothing like 12-step workout. And I'm not going to try to put it in words. I read something recently that the minute you put the spiritual happening into words, you lose it. It's the 4th dimension. Catapulted into a 4th dimension. And you can't be told what that is. If you could, Bill W. would have been a little more specific. It's so unbelievable. The awakenings to see the divine providence, how all this was part of this unbelievable plan. And for me, part of the plan has been to be a messenger. That for people like us with this incurable disease, there is hope. But I had to get hopeless before I got it. I had to reach a bottom. And I never knew what that bottom was until over the years in recovery, I could look back and see it. Now, I suggest people who are chronic relapsers do three things. One, read the doctor's opinion over and over. You cannot, and I cannot, erase the religious programming now in my mind. It can't be erased. I hope I'm wrong. But in my life, I see it cellular. So I need a message that it gets louder than that program message I was brought up with. And the doctor's opinion is one of those messages. We're restless, irritable, and discontented. That is our symptom from our illness. And we have a physical allergy accompanied by mental obsession. Then I suggest you read the first 5 paragraphs before the steps in chapter 5, the AA book, with your sponsor, and get honest where your sticking points are, where you're having difficulty with the first 5 paragraphs. That's how you're going to do the steps if you can't get through those first 5 paragraphs. And last but not least, to know that God's going to love you anyway. That this is not a shame issue. I'm so old that I remember how people in the 1940s would never say they had cancer. It was like a punishment. And so many people in this fellowship has difficulty letting people know they're in recovery, spreading the word. And there is a 4th thing. That's, I forgot the 3rd, so I put something else in. So the 3rd one I want to tell you about was this wonderful chapter in the SA book. I just wish they would have put it in the front instead of the back. How I overcame an obsession with lust. It goes 1, 2, 3, all kinds of tools. Some of them are not good for me. They're too religious. But I live by some of them. I do them all through my day. God, whatever it is I'm looking for in that person, may I find in you. God, free that woman or man from their lust, like you have freed me from mine today. God, so thank you for reminding me I'm still sick. get the tools for those who aren't into S&M. I just took mine, put it somewhere. I wear a rubber band a lot of times. If you're not into self-hurt, because I'm not having lust thoughts today, but I'm having obsessions still. The obsession of the mind. And I flip that rubber band, because if you let obsessions of any kind into your head and not take an action, I've watched it time and again, those obsessions will bring you to other obsessions, which will then bring you back to your default obsession of lust. So resentment, anger, fear are some of my obsessions. A physical allergy accompanied by a mental obsession. The program works. We're going to have 3 other people today who will testify to. Each of us will have a different view on it. Hopefully, we won't have a cookie cutter view, because we get a loving God manifested in our group. And hopefully you'll hear 3 other ways people work their program, utilize their program, dependent on their abilities. My abilities, I'm dyslexic. So for me to do a lot of reading doesn't work well for me. I need much more of the oral part of the program. My personality gets angry after a while with chronic relapsing if I'm trying to help the person. And my job is to always love them. So I have a one-strike relationship with my sponsees. There are people going to talk today who their personalities can handle chronic relapse. See, I have to be honest with me and embrace me and not try to be someone else. And I'll end with my sponsor, Cherry, would always tell me, Harvey, never compare yourself to someone else in the program. Don't compare your insides to their outsides. Compare you with you from last week and last month and last year and 10 years ago. That's where my comparisons come. Am I moving ahead or am I going back? With that, let me leave it open for some questions and answers. Again, this is only my opinion. The day you think what I'm saying is truth, you're caught into dogma again. It's just my truth for my recovery. Okay, people.
Fantastic. Thank you, Harvey. I'm just going to recap the five suggestions you gave for chronic relapses. 1, read the doctor's opinion. 2, read the first 5 chapters with a sponsor and address where you're having difficulties. 3, God loves you regardless. It's not a shame issue. 4, read the essay book, the 18-wheeler. And I put number 5 here, no obsessions. Okay, so if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Harvey, I can see a number of hands that have popped up, so I missed the order. I'm going to go to my good friend Dennis in New York. Would you like to ask the first question today, Dennis?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Harvey. Harvey, I've heard you mention it a number of times, but can you expand on the difference between a sex addict and a sexual abuser?
I have a fascinating history with this because that first year in Nashville, I used to keep track. This was back in 1984, and we had about 110 people come and go. There were about 2 of us left after a year. And most of those people who came that first year were from 12-stepping we did in AA. Yes, we were all in AA. Over the years, I found that a lot of those people 10, 15 years later were still at the AA meetings. They weren't locked up, covered up. Maybe they were so good. And I find many people who come to our meetings don't feel comfortable doing a sexual inventory for their 4th step in AA. And they would come and get a lot of that shame out and be okay. Okay? Now, when a kid goes to college and he joins a fraternity and he drinks like a wild man, he might even get blackouts. He might even get arrested. But once he graduates and he goes back home and he's not around that environment, he's okay. He drinks occasionally, whatever. 10% of people, approximately, won't be able to do what that guy did. They are true alcoholics. This disease runs in my family, just like alcoholism. It's just there. I'm a genetically susceptible. Now, people are going to say, you mean it wasn't from being sexually abused, Harvey? I was a sex addict before I ever became sexually abused. Now, what did the sexual abuse when I was 11 and a half do for me? It gave me a certain pattern of some of my acting out. But it was there way before. And I wrote it all down. Man, a first step is not necessarily an autobiography. It's just a very clear, simple way of proving to you, am I a sex addict or am I not? Is it progressing? Am I building tolerance? Like any other drug. Some of my SA sponsors could have over the years, could have a glass of wine. They were not allergic to alcohol. I am. And when it happens, you will see a consistent approach. If you're willing to recognize the fantasies get more involved, the pornography progresses into deeper stuff, the masturbation with instrumentation, etc., progresses. The acting out progresses. If you're a sex addict, and then you go through withdrawal when you start coming off, which many people do. See, many people who relapse, if you find, you will see there is a time element of their relapsing. And each one's different. But what happens is they're getting a withdrawal death experience. And they end up acting out just like a heroin addict will. if the withdrawal gets too significant. And it's so interesting because in the chapter 5, it says that we were reborn. How do we get reborn if we don't die? We actually have to die within through the withdrawal process of being willing to say, even though my body is giving me a false message that I'm dying, I'm not going to act out today if my back's up. Dennis, I hope that gives a little bit, but by the way, everything I'm saying might not be true. This all might be propaganda. It all might be stuff that's not true at all, but it's my truth. And it's worked for me. And for most people who have long-term sobriety, I'll put a money bet on, no matter how religious they are, how much they believe in God, they also believe they have a physical allergy accompanied by a mental obsession, manifested by being irritable, restless, and discontent.
Thanks, Jeff. Would you like to speak to that, Harvey?
Stage 4. That's the miracle. That somehow, even with advanced disease, we could get a daily reprieve. Somehow. I don't know quite how it works, but it works. And people could have stage 4, let's say cancer, and live for many, many years. Okay? Now, the important thing for me is to remember that nothing I say really matters. Because I am powerless over my character defects also. So I am powerless over dishonesty. I'm powerless over lying and stealing and cheating. And the more I can embrace how deep this disease is, that we are like men who have lost our legs and can never grow new ones. Who would have ever thought that once I accepted that my legs have been cut off, I'm walking and running better than I ever have? You can't explain it. But this is also an aspect of, hopefully, and Bill and the others are so good at talking about steps. The steps help me accept me. See, God doesn't make crap. And God doesn't make diseases, in my opinion. Diseases is what people get, or we'd never die. I mean, we all have to have them. It's part of being born. You have the disease, you die. So I want to end some of this with the concept of gratitude. The attitude of gratitude. When we stay in gratitude, it eliminates for the moment my other obsessions of resentment and fear, especially. And when I'm free of those, I have a lower chance of the obsession coming back to my default. And I'm going to end with this also. I'm going to die with active disease, except it doesn't have power over me. I'm not going to act out today if my backside falls off. I've done my two-way contract. I've hit my knees this morning. Went to a meeting yesterday, on a meeting today. I'm okay today. But I have something that's precious to give to you. 38 years in recovery. I'm 83. The disease is still there. Still there. If anyone ever thinks they're going to outgrow this disease, I wish you well. I wish you well. And yesterday we were talking about a relative, my wife and I won't go into specifics, and this person was dating this person, and out of nowhere I said to my wife, "Oh, I bet they had sex already." My wife looks at me. Where the hell did that come from? Out of nowhere. My mind said, "Oh, they had a date, they had sex." That's what happens. But it has no power over me. We were able to be hysterical, laughing, saying, "Nancy, if you think I've outgrown this disease, you're wrong." But it has no power over me. And I'll give you one more little story that happened yesterday. I live in a retirement center, independent living. We have a movie theater in the center. And my wife said, "Oh, there's this movie called Chocolate they're playing tonight." And she said, "It's a PG, Harvey." Because she knows I don't watch movies and nudity. And I said, "Oh, thanks, but let me check it out." And I looked it up. It had brief nudity. It had a sexual scene. I said, "Honey, you could go. I'm going to skip it." See, my disease won't go away. But I don't go to movies like that because of what my sponsor taught me. That the program's not about lust. It's about comfort. I need to be comfortable. And I'm not going to be comfortable in my program seeing nudity. I get uncomfortable. I'm a voyeur, I'm an exhibitionist, yet in recovery, I get uncomfortable. And I need to be in eternal vigilance every day, not to live on my laurels, it quotes, and always be asking myself, am I moving ahead in my recovery? What am I doing different? What am I adding? This, if I don't, I'm going to go back. I've seen it time and again. So thanks a million, everyone. Love you all. And as my sponsor would say when he asked me, "Harvey, do you think God loved you when you were doing all those low-life things you used to do?" And I'd finally say, "Yeah, I guess so." And he'd then say, "Well, he must be hog-ass wild about you now." God
Thanks, Harvey.
loves us. Be well.
Thanks, Harvey. We truly appreciate
Thank you,
your
Harvey.
talk today.